I'll call the Board of Selectmen meeting to order at 7 o'clock for Thursday, March 7th, 2019. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any additional agenda items? I'd like to make a change to the agenda. Item 12A, I'd like to move to be the first item in 5 presentations, and that's Jay from Jay Russo is going to give us a presentation, and as long as he's here, we might as well let him go first. Is there a set? I move we move item 12 to be the first under presentation item 5.
Second.
Any discussion? No. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So, Jay, you're up.
Thank you very much for the change in the agenda. I was expecting to sit here for a while. My name's Jay Ursery. I'm with J.R. Russo and Associates, and I think, as you probably know, we've been involved with the Sardilli Group in terms of the development of the property on South Main Street. And we've been before your land use boards in terms of the Planning and Zoning Commission and the Wetlands Commission. And we're currently working with the State Traffic Commission. And in going through our traffic analysis, we've come up with a situation where some of the roadways around the development are going to need some improvements. And one of those happens to be South Water Street. And I've got a plan marked up here for you, for each of you to take a look at. And really what it involves is at the intersection of South Water Street and Route 5, the traffic analysis is telling us that we need to do some widening in terms of adding a turning lane on South Water Street to go southbound onto Route 5. So it will involve a widening of South Water Street itself. So as we come down South Water, we get to the intersection for the traffic light, and we're kind of facing Pasco's or Roberto's. We want to go right. Currently, there's just one lane there. So if there's traffic backed up and somebody wants to take a right, guy in front of them wants to go left, you're waiting. So the analysis is saying we need a right-hand turn lane, so we're going to do some widening there to add an exclusive right-hand turn lane onto Route 5. And in doing that, what we find is that the current right-of-way is fairly wide enough. The Route 5 right-of-way is wide enough, but right at the intersection, which I've got highlighted there in that plan in front of you in blue, is a piece of land that happens to be owned by the town of East Windsor. It was a parcel, I think, that was originally part of Woket Landing, the condominium development, and for some reason or the other, the town ended up with it, and I think it was for delinquent taxes. So there's a parcel there that's owned by the town, and that area that's shaded in blue is an area that we would need an easement for to create a radius coming around the corner and the relocation of some utilities. And the utilities basically involve the traffic light. There's pull boxes, the traffic loops, and controls for the traffic loops themselves. Those would all be replaced at that intersection. And in order to do that, fit that infrastructure in there, we would be encroaching onto the piece of property that's currently owned by the town. So we would need an easement from the town in order to do that. When we submit to OSTA, or the State Traffic Commission, one of the things that they're going to require is something from the Board of Selectmen indicating that they're willing to work with the developer in terms of granting an easement to move forward and hopefully get the improvements put in place so that we could widen the road. So I brought this plan here to show you tonight. The area that we're talking about is relatively small. The widest length on the inside of that piece of pie is about 40 feet. and at the widest spot, it's about 20 feet wide. So it's fairly small, but it's a pinch point right at that intersection that we would need to gain this easement over in order to do the roadway widening. So what I've also done is I've provided a sample letter that if you choose to grant an easement or in the future grant us an easement, this is a letter that we drafted up that essentially would hopefully go on the letterhead from the Board of Selectmen to David Sawicki, who is the Executive Director of the State Traffic Commission, that would accompany our application to them with these roadway improvements for them to review and consider and hopefully approve within the next 2 or 3 months. And that's what we're looking to do to hopefully get our approvals through the State Commission, hopefully sometime in May or June of this year, so that we can start construction hopefully sometime this summer. So that's basically what I'm here for. I talked to Bob earlier, and he suggested that I put this together, come in and talk to you. He seemed receptive to it, and I'm hopefully that the rest of the board is as well. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah. The length of the widening of the road, not the width, but how far does it have to go back?
If you take a look here, Charlie, we're actually adding an 11-foot lane on this side. And as we come up here and get to the intersection, the line in orange is the current property line. And we would be, new curb line would be right here. We have a new control box there, a new pole there, and a new control box there. There's those squares in the round circle. So the actual paved area that's on the property is very small.
Yeah.
It's probably not much bigger than this table, to be honest, but the way this sticks out right into the intersection, it just doesn't allow that radius to come through there the way it would need to in order for a truck to make that turn and be able to stay in the proper lane without encroaching over into the other northbound lane to make the corner.
So what do we need to do to grant them an easement?
Well, I made up a motion, and I'll read it.
I mean, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, and you're right. In fact, in the Route 5 study, that traffic light is holding up traffic when they're exiting on on exit 44, and they come and take a right at rush hour, and that light is timed, so it just doesn't pay attention to the traffic flow. It just puts red when it's supposed to. And the reason it's timed is the wires in the pavement are broken, and the pavement's not really in good enough shape to have new wires, new trip wires. So that would help the Route 5 flow very much to have that done.
Yeah, part of this improvement would actually involve reestablishment of new traffic loops at that intersection, which Sargilli would be paying for to install. Bob's right, currently the traffic loops there is you typically drive into a signalized intersection, you'd go over the loops, and then the light would change.
Yeah.
These don't work. So what happens here is the light is on a timer, and it just continues to change, and in many cases, there's nobody even at the intersection. So it's holding up traffic on Route 5, and there's nobody even at South Water Street or at Pasco Drive on the other side. It's simply functioning on a timer basis.
So the improvement here is borne by the developer?
Correct.
Okay, let's sign.
Okay, so I'd say...
I have some questions.
Sure.
Is it typical of the Board of Selectmen to grant an easement and not the Planning and Zoning Commission?
The Board of Selectmen ultimately would have to grant the easement, not planning and zoning. They have no authority to do that.
Has Planning and Zoning seen the proposal?
Yes.
Have they given their approval?
Planning and zoning has approved the application, yes.
Including to slice off the pie here?
They are aware of the intersection and the improvements. I'm not sure about the actual easement, so
Okay.
I wasn't at that meeting.
I personally would be comfortable if they had done that, particularly the chairman, given his expertise on that.
This will be reviewed by the State Traffic Commission, Connecticut DOT.
Yeah. I mean, it's DOT. What if any cost will the town incur?
The only cost that I might envision would be a review of the final easement document by the town attorney.
Okay.
Construction costs would be none.
In the absence of the Sargilli development going in, would there be a need for this?
Right now, I would say there is a need for this. The traffic loops do need to be replaced. The light doesn't function properly. Turning movements at that intersection are compromised by the current pavement configuration. So in other words, today, if a large truck comes to that intersection and wants to turn right or turn northbound, he's encroaching into the other lanes in order to do that and make that turn and stay on the pavement that's currently made.
Do you have a sense of whether or not truck traffic on that road, to what degree there is large truck traffic on that road currently? Yeah.
No, I don't.
So I'm trying to figure out, and I don't know the answer to this, how frequently like an 18-wheeler would be cutting down South Water Street from the Warehouse Point Bridge versus going up the hill and down Route 5.
I don't know the answer to that.
Well, one thing, if they put in that roundabout at the edge of the bridge, then that would accelerate it, possibly.
That would assume that we're supportive of the roundabout.
I'm just saying, if it does go in, that would be
But
the way.
it's actually not even just tractor trailers, larger box trucks, probably your ladder truck from the fire department in Warehouse Point couldn't make that turning movement at that intersection without encroaching into opposite lanes of traffic with its current configuration.
All right, Bob, so this is something we need to do. So the DOT will approve this project to move forward, right?
That's true.
Okay.
Jason, you have more questions?
I do not.
Okay, then I move to grant the easement as described in roadway improvement plan prepared by J.R. Rousseau Associates LLC to improve the intersection of South Main Street and South Water Street. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Jason?
I am opposed.
Okay.
Naturally.
Thank you
very much.
Yeah.
You want these back, Jay?
You can keep them if you like. It's up to you.
Give one to Noreen.
Keep it.
Barbara.
I can give one to Maureen.
All right. The next presentation will be by Terry Hahn of LADA. She's going to describe where the status of the Warehouse Point Stormwater Management and Vision Center, Village Center development.
Good evening. Irene, principal at the LADA PC Land Planners. We've been working on the stormwater planning grant for Warehouse Point. I'm just bringing you up to date and sort of continuing conversations that we have had previously. There's a number of handouts that we'll go through. Just a summary of what we have done in the past so far is look at draft versions of the existing conditions maps, talk about, give a sort of visual understanding of the stormwater that exists related to the blue ditch, and start some of the questions regarding regulations that are affecting flooding and stormwater in Warehouse Point. So those are the things that we have sort of done to date. What we just want to follow up on today and continuing on later this month is what did those existing conditions maps, which are now complete, show us, to highlight a few specific elements, and then start to look at what the town is doing briefly, talk about what the town is doing currently for preparedness related to flooding and the various different regulations associated with stormwater and the flood zones. So just I'll just walk you through sort of all those pieces. The final existing conditions maps, I'm not sure sort of what you want and if you want to wait for a report. This is all part of a report associated, which will ultimately be part of this project. The first part is the existing conditions. This includes an analysis or an inventory of various different parts of Warehouse Point, everything from streets to street numbers, to what's happening on a pedestrian basis, to soils, to flood limits, and the recommended or requested spreadsheet showing all the properties within Warehouse Point and their various different, what size they are, what soils they are. There was it's sort of a request that just sort of keep everything in one place if you prefer spreadsheets instead of drawings. If I could, one of the things that's important and is sort of the takeaways of this inventory study is if we go on to the flood limits plan, which is like 4 or 5 into your packet, which we've seen before and presented before, but just sort of bringing that to your attention. One of the questions that you guys had asked me before was, well, what are we, this is an interesting map. It takes up, the flood limits seem to be sort of throughout relative to the Connecticut River Warehouse Point. What does this mean and what are we doing about it? A couple of things that I just want to bring to your attention is that I've spoke to Art Enderle at the WPCA. They are very much so aware of their position within the floodplain to the point where they, back at Hurricane Irene, they had too many pictures, too many folders. What occurred in Hurricane Irene was enough rain that the Connecticut River raised up to approximately just under the 30 contour, the 30-foot elevation. For the most part, just for orientation purposes, South Water Street, as it comes off the bridge up to the wastewater treatment plant, is at approximately elevation 30. And at Hurricane Irene, just about the Connecticut River, what happens is that the water comes down through the Blue Ditch, hits the Connecticut River, and when the Connecticut River raises up, you get a backwater condition back to the Blue Ditch. So the picture that you see is that the Connecticut River and the Blue Ditch were up at approximately elevation 30. And so it was bouncing up. There's a garage door and a man door in the middle of this structure. And it had about 4 to 6 feet of water up against that door. Since then, they have created a series of protections that they have watertight panels that go in front of the doors that will come in and keep the water out should that occur. And there's some electronics inside that particular building that they have lifted up out of the flood elevation. The reason why I mention this is just to get a sense of when you're looking out there at Warehouse Point and you're trying to figure out where you are, the flood limit that you see there in green, the 100-year flood is identified as elevation 35. So in that particular case, okay, just the South Water Street at elevation 30 would be 5 feet above that, with the additional 5 feet above that level at the wastewater treatment plant from Hurricane Irene. The reason why this is important is because the current way of doing things, of course, is to look at insurance claims that would have occurred. And since 1983, there have been 16 insurance claims on South Water Street from various different storms. The idea would be, going forward, what are the town's current regulations related to development within the floodplain, and what needs to happen. Just to be clear, the current regulations do not require removal of structures within the floodplain. But the current regulations do say that if you have a substantial improvement or restoration due to damage, which in the town of East Windsor is 25% of the overall value of the property, then it must now meet what is known as the base flood elevation plus 1 foot. The base flood elevation is established by FEMA based on the flood maps. And in this particular case, the base flood elevation, let's call it elevation 35. So what you want to do is get your finished floor and your electronics 1 foot above that elevation at 35. And so that should, it's in many ways, you can imagine, you've seen the pictures on the shore, where everybody puts their house up on stilts, so that the finished floor elevation is above that flood elevation.
Well, the houses on Southwater Street, on the west side of the street, those were underwater when that happened. So explain to me, how would that work then? I mean,
Well, that's one of the things that we're...
What forces the people to do that?
Nothing forces anyone to do that. Just to be clear, what it says though is if you've had, if you end up restoring or the structure has been damaged more than 25% of the overall value of that, then you need to start to comply with these regulations.
It says if the damage has been 25% or if the cost of the improvement
The
is
cost of the
equal to
improvement.
25%. So if the cost of the improvement is equal to 25% of the value of the property.
Right.
That's not the same thing.
Correct. Just so that we're clear, make sure I said it properly. It's what's known as substantial improvement, and in the town of East Windsor's own regulation, section 810 in the zoning regulations, which you have copies of, it very clearly states sort of what that is. So it has to do with if the improvements equal to 25%. Okay. Now, that regulation, which you currently have, is on the high end.
So if I live on South Water Street and I have a $200,000 home,
Correct.
and I have $60,000 worth of damage because of water,
Right.
that would now need to comply with the FEMA high water mark standard and our zoning regulation.
Correct.
Even if I'm just repairing it to its $200,000 value.
And that is what your current regulation says, and your regulation has been in effect for quite some time now. It was established in 2008, I think.
So that's not really a 25% improvement. That's more
No,
like
it's
a restoration.
Correct, restoration. So if it's been damaged, where you're spending more than 25% of the value, then that would trigger it. Now, your current East Windsor regulation is much higher than what is actually the federal and the sort of original model, floodplain models. The current models for regulations are 50%. But your regulation, which has been in place for quite some time, is 25%. The other difference, compared to some of the general models out there, is that there is variance provisions. Your regulation does not have any variance provisions, specifically prohibits variances. So the interesting thing is that the planning board and the planning department have processed no applications under this regulations. There was an application back in 2004 that was done to the previous regulations, 120 South Water Street, where they renovated the house and they did everything that they were supposed to. They lifted the finished floor elevation up so that at that time the base flood elevation was considered 34. And they set the finished floor elevation at 35.21. They did exactly what they were supposed to. In 2008, FEMA changed the vertical datum that they use in order to determine what it is. So at this point, that 35.25 would be basically 34.25 under the current vertical elevations that they're using. So it's just a little bit under the current base flood elevation. So it's two things happened. The reason why the datum changed is because the reconfiguration of sea level, so that they set it differently. So that's sort of what's going on. But your regulations do in fact have some real teeth and are pretty close to or actually a higher level than the sort of original models that were out there in 2008. The question that, of course, comes into play is, as a community, what is it that you want to be doing in those areas? And remember that anything that you're thinking about in terms of flood zones at Warehouse Point, there are other flood zones in town related to other rivers. So anything that happens in this area also affects elsewhere in town related to flood zones. So at the moment, there are clear flood regulations. If you wish to if your building is damaged or if you have any new construction, would meet that BFE plus 1 foot that would occur.
Help me with the acronym, BFE?
Base flood elevation, I'm sorry. So the base flood elevation in your handouts, it looks like this piece here. This information. So it sets the profiles from FEMA, tells you what and then adds a foot to them so that if you look at the blue lines, it's approximately 35, which sets the BFE or base flood elevation plus 1 foot at approximately 36 feet, 36.1 feet. So those are kind of the guidelines that are out there at the moment.
Well, with those guidelines, just as a point of curiosity, what did they do in Lower Manhattan when flood came?
Yeah, well,
You didn't move those.
no, and that's, their regulations are a little bit different, and every community responds differently. I think there's a lot of pressure in this Connecticut and deep along the shoreline communities to change. They actually enacted legislation in the State House last summer so that along the shoreline, under those flood regulations, you have to set your buildings at the BFE plus 2 feet.
Yep.
And that's related specifically to the shore
Coastal erosion, right?
well, to respond to rising sea levels. So that's, but the Connecticut River, they're probably a good 10 or 15 years away from doing the same level of research and documentation for the Connecticut River and the riverine systems.
Is there any impact on, and I don't know if you know the answer to this, but is there any impact on property owners' homeowners insurance based on what our regulations are with?
No, I mean, typically your regulations are reflective of the federal regulations. That's sort of how the model regulation works. You can add some things that are a little bit more onerous or choose from a menu of things. Yeah. So your regulations are pretty much on target, except for those 2 elements where they're a little bit more conservative compared to the rest of the nation and what FEMA would require. Where it happens is typically if you have a mortgage and your property is within the floodplain, you would have flood insurance, which is offered through FEMA. But if you do not have a mortgage, in other words, you've paid it off and you've been there a long time, you are not required to have a mortgage. The insurance companies get in play from a market condition because they don't, depending on what the circumstances are, flood versus hurricane related. I think that's kind of what has occurred in the past in this particular area. So if property owners have flood insurance, then they are in fact paying for that extra coverage. So it's not a regulatory thing, it's a market.
I just don't want to be making it any more difficult for those people.
Right. One of the pieces of the handout that I gave you, the one with it's called a Connecticut DEEP model. It's one of the current ideas that DEEP has for upgrading the flood regulations to reflect the recently approved 2015 International Building Code. The model is provided for your information only. It is a much more aggressive approach that I think fundamentally they're looking to reduce rebuilds, but is not necessarily, I'm just giving it to you for your information. I think the community as a whole, as part of this project, needs to sort of figure out where you want to be in the spectrum.
This would be a planning and zoning issue, though.
Yes. Yep.
Anything more you want to show us, or?
I was just going to, I had one last piece, which was, so the way the project works from here is we'll put together a report that's related to all these maps and discussions that we've had. And then the next phase of what we're doing is take this information and create sort of a summary map of all the opportunities and issues of all of the discussions that we've been having that we would then start to use as a discussion that ultimately goes for a public work session, hopefully at the end of April, the beginning of May. And so I'll be coming to you and ask you questions about sort of what we would like to present to the public, what discussions we want to get out of that, and how you want to handle it, if you want to do it as part of a Board of Selectmen meeting, or if you would like to do it as a separate, isolated meeting. So that's kind of where we're at. The ultimate end of this project is a final report submitted in November and reviewed in December. So we'll be completed before January 1st.
Okay.
Is that the grant deadline?
That is the target that's defined within the grant. They said you could move a little bit one way or another, but that's kind of where we're headed. Yep, it's consistent with that.
Okay, so you've presented this to planning and zoning already.
Yes, yep.
Did they have anything to say, or?
Yeah, they had a couple of tweaks to the maps, a couple of tweaks to the information that was being provided, additional questions. So we've added those things in, and we just keep moving.
Good.
Okay.
So, and if you guys had any other questions or things that you feel it should, a direction it should go, then this is the time to sort of throw some of that stuff out. But it's not the end.
Okay.
That's all I've got.
Thanks.
Okay, good,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you.
And Rebecca's 250th anniversary.
All right. We are finally done. So just for the final report, I kind of already gone over everything from Heritage Day and everything like that, so I'm not gonna go over and repeat any of that, but just to recap, we did have roughly $8,000 left over in our account, which the checks were made at the last selectmen's meeting, and they will be distributed for the month of March. And the 8 organizations that we chose were the East Windsor Historical Society, East Windsor Veterans Commission, Abby's Helping Hand, East Windsor Safe Grad, Pauline's Stockpot Kitchen, the Five Cornered Cupboard, the Connecticut Trolley Museum, and then the Network Against Domestic Abuse. So each organization got just over $1,000. So that's great for that. We did have some leftover merchandise. We did separate some of it out. We had an entire box of mugs that was unopened. We brought those to On the Dam restaurant so they could use mugs. The leftover water bottles that we had, we gave to Melissa at Park and Rec to use for the summer camp program or for any other Park and Rec use. We gave the kids' t-shirts to the Broadbrook nurse's office for kids have an accident or whatever, so be it. We gave all the adult t-shirts and sweatshirts to the Human Services / the Senior Center and Park and Rec too. They're kind of all jumbled together with Melissa, so she said she was going to use it whatever she felt best, and I said that was fine. And then we gave leftover books, mugs, totes, magnets, and coins to the Broadbrook Library and the Historical Society, so they're selling them on their own. I don't know what their costs are, but they did drop them from what we had them at. So go check out the Broadbrook Library or the Historical Society for any other leftover merchandise that we had. So
You're done.
yeah, we're done.
Well, that's great, I think we should do it again.
Yeah, it's been 50 years,
Okay.
so we got some time.
You and Sarah are in charge.
There you go. I'll grab Sarah, and you.
I'm a little questionable.
Yeah, we'll grab baby Jason, baby Gaza. So with that being said, we would like to ask to be resolved as a committee. And that's it.
All right. Do you want to make a motion, Jason?
I move to dissolve the 250th Celebration Planning Committee with regret and gratitude.
Very well said. I'll second it. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Woohoo!
Excellent.
Thank you.
Okay, now we'll move on to item number 6, discussion and approval of transfers and appropriations. First is, and maybe Len, you can come up, the old senior center bus. Bring a chair.
I'm gonna grab a wheelie.
All right.
I might need to make a
You gotta
fast
stay
get.
wild.
Plus I can sit higher. Good evening. We have a senior center bus that was replaced with the newest bus that we got, and we've inherited it at the town garage. We had a few thoughts as to what to do with it. Initially, we were thinking maybe we'd run it through the auction, and the more I thought about it, the Broadbrook Fire Department was donated a bus several years ago, and Warehouse Point has expressed an interest in the one we have at the town garage. So I recommended to Bob that we donate the bus to the Warehouse Point Fire Department for their use. I actually have copies of a letter here from Jim Barton, the fire chief, just so you'd have an idea as to what I honestly, personally didn't care what they were going to do with it, but looks like he wants to put it to some good use. I just want it out of my yard. And having read the letter, I think it's a great use for this bus. I believe that's what Broadbrook does with the one that they were donated several years ago. I mean, it's as is. They get it the way it is.
Good to go.
Okay, so I move we donate the old senior center bus to the Warehouse Point Fire District.
I'll second that.
Discussion. Jason?
What's the typical process for the dissolution of property?
Well, if we trade it in, we get the paperwork and what have you. We don't, we can't really just sell it. We would have to have, we'd either have to trade it in, run it through the auction. We could have a little auction at the garage. We've done that before too. That's a waste of time. Or donate it. So what we will do is we'll donate it. It will come off the town's records as an asset, and they'll take it over. We'll give them. I don't know if that bus may have a title. We don't always have titles, but we have certificates of origin for some of our trucks. But
We have a title.
okay, we have a title for that bus, so they'll take title. We'll transfer it. I imagine Bob will sign over the transfer the title over to them.
Why can't we sell it?
We could.
You said we couldn't.
Oh, sell it. We could trade it in. Well, who would you sell it to?
So it's a matter of.
If I sell it to you for 500 and Steve says I would have given you 6, you know,
So it's
you'd
not,
have to have kind of a little auction.
so it's not that there's a prohibition on it, there's just some logistics that
Right.
are problematic.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Do we have access to, or would we avail ourselves of the state surplus list? If we were, in terms of, I know we can acquire property that way, can we disperse property that way as well?
I never have. I don't know that they have, I think, a difficult enough time getting rid of their own surplus again, they have a yard where they collect these items. I purchased items from the state surplus, and they just want to get rid of it. I mean, they sell their stuff
So to
pretty cheap.
To your knowledge, it's one way.
Yes, to my knowledge.
If we were to do this, would it be taxable?
Would the bus be taxable?
Yes.
Hey, Amy.
I'm thinking no, because they're a nonprofit too.
Yeah.
So if we were selling it to a person, it probably would be, but by donating it, transferring it to a municipal organization, we're probably fine. 'Cause the fire
I mean, if we ran it through the auction or sold, I mean, it wouldn't be, I mean, unless somebody in town bought it, it wouldn't be taxable.
Well, we're not responsible for the taxes. The Department of Motor Vehicle would collect taxes on anything we sold. When you
I
go
was
to
more
register
thinking about the property taxes on the back end.
on the back end, well, we're donating it to a
Not a
nonprofit.
nonprofit, so we don't have property taxes.
Okay.
Anything else?
Those are all legit questions, man. I'm not like,
All right, so I think,
somebody's got to ask you guys something.
Paul, yeah,
Is this going to the district or the department?
I think it's going to the district.
Okay.
And that's what I said, so, is there, I made a motion. Is there, and you seconded it, so we'll vote. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
We'll deliver it tomorrow.
excellent. All right, now the next thing is,
I
bridge
guess I'll
work.
stay here.
Yes, please do. You've got- That's in your packet, and well, you can tell us, the state has...
Yeah, the state goes around every couple of years and they review, generally they review bridges. As of late, they've been reviewing culverts, big culverts. Actually, some of the culverts they review are on the small side, but we have a number of reports that they've given to us where they believe that our drainage structures are not desirable. So I'm going to try and get a number of them taken care of. I think the worst of which we've been considering trying to do something for years ourselves because we know it's not in great shape, is that semi-bridge box culvert that turns into a pipe on Highland Avenue. It's about halfway through, it changes from a box culvert to like a corrugated metal pipe. I'm not quite sure how they made that connection. But
Where is that?
right after you turn onto Highland, right down behind the restaurant.
Oh, okay.
Right there, right in the little
Where the
hollow
water
there.
comes under and loops around and goes
Yep.
in.
Used to come out of Butternut Pond,
Yeah.
you know, and the dam is gone, so that, in any event, there's some, that's one structure, and I've been able to, I have a structural engineer working on some of these fixes for me. I can pay for, I can take care of the designs and the hydraulics, but I didn't make copies of this, but as you can see, the corrugated metal pipe part is rotten, the bottom's gone, the top's gone. As a matter of fact, in the box culvert part of that, there's a pipe. It's about a 2-inch pipe, and it constantly spews water. So 2 years ago, when they did their inspection, they told me the water company's got there's a pipe in there that's leaking. I said, fine. So I called the water company, they went out there, and they said, it's not ours. I'm like, well, it's a pipe and there's water in it. Whose is it? So it still spews water. We don't know who it belongs to, so we're gonna just cut it. You know, it could be.
Brought water all the way up to the last house on.
It could be an older pipe, and I don't know why there's still water in it. Groundwater, the joints probably suck, whatever, but,
That's what it was.
you
All the
know,
way up to Damon's house.
about a 2-inch pipe goes up. Okay, that was sort of what we thought, but we couldn't confirm it. Okay. So in any event, so that's one. The engineering estimate to repair that with a design with probably a box culvert is $500,000 to repair that. The next probably one we should consider is on the far downstream end of the area that the young lady was just talking about over Morales Point. It's right next to the overpass on the highway, just south of the treatment plant. You got the treatment plant, the highway, then you have a culvert. The water course, the blue ditch, if you will, actually crosses, goes behind the back of the treatment plant, comes under 91, and then it discharges under South Water Street into the Connecticut River. That culvert there is a metal culvert that's in rough shape, and they gave that a pretty poor rating too. That culvert, to replace that culvert is another $500,000 likely. The saving grace would be, I think we need to consider it, will be $500,000. If when we get done with the hydrologic study, the existing culvert that's there will handle the flows, we may be able to put a liner in it for like a couple $100,000, something like that, 150, 200. But I hate to count on that, because if we count on 2 and it's 5, that's a problem. I'd rather count on 5 and have it be 2, just so you have that information. We have culverts on East Road. There's a double barrel squash culvert out there, 60 by 38 inch culvert. You can't really get those metal culverts. You know, I'd like to replace it with some of this high density polyethylene. I'd have to put 3 we have a height restriction there, so I'd have to replace that with a triple barrel culvert, and the East Road's about $45,000. And there's about a 6-foot culvert on Norton Road, which is down by the condos, and that would be about $125,000 to replace that culvert. I'm doing the design on the Norton Road and East Road, and my structural guy's doing the South Water Street, Highland Avenue. So those are the main ones that we need to do. And it's over $1 million. It's over $1 million, because 2 of them are $1 million. So.
Yeah, it's 1.2 million.
So,
Is there any opportunity to get something help with the Army Corps of Engineers?
I don't know, and I don't know if you get involved with like you can always get involved with the state bridge program, but what you find if you get involved with a state program, it ends up costing you more to use their money than if you just do it yourself. Because with the restrictions and what have you that they put on it, and the paperwork, that $500,000 crossing probably becomes a $1.5 million crossing that they'll contribute half of, so now we're paying $750 instead of $5. You know, one of those deals.
Is it worth to look into it?
I mean, we can look into it. The Corps of Engineers won't do anything for us because we're not really on they're culverts. You know, the state bridge program may, but that money's pretty tight too.
Because they did it over on Ellington on Lower Butcher Road.
Well, we used their money on the Windsor Bridge.
Okay.
We used the state bridge program there, and it's very cumbersome, and the money that they make you spend and the things they make you do, it just ends up costing 2 or 3 times what it should, and you end up, and they don't contribute that much, so you end up actually paying more money going through their programs.
I wouldn't even count on the money being there.
Well, that's the other thing. I don't know that there's a whole lot of it available at this point.
That's special transportation fund dollars?
It's out of they have a bridge program. It's a.
I think that's STF money. I would not, we're better off going along. Particularly when we have the balance on hand and need to deplete it.
That's what I.
And I'd like to we can also take advantage of this. It's over $1 million, and we wouldn't bond for $1 million. That'd be too expensive. But we could do, and we're looking into what we could do if we did bond. And I meant to Xerox this and pass it out, but some of the things are, there's the Department of Public Works roof replacement for about $426,000, and there's a senior center and Broadbrook Fire Department roof replacement for $160,000. There's the Trombley paving for about $400,000, Wells Road paving for $180,000, and Standard Road paving for about a little over $500,000. So we're looking into bonding. So this is just for your information. We still haven't resolved anything.
Those paving prices went up this afternoon, by the way. They opened the state bid this morning.
Okay. All right, so that's good. Well, if there's not any more questions, we'll move on to the next agenda item.
I have one question.
Sure.
Last year, during the budget time, you had talked about something over at the reservoir to replace
That's on.
culvert there.
Yeah.
That is, actually, that's on my little bonding thing here. That's about 200,000, replacing the outlet structure.
Okay, so
And we're currently, we actually have the money for the design, and it's being worked on as we speak.
Okay, so that's in motion.
Yes, that's in motion. We have the money, the structural, he's working on it. As a matter of fact, I can, if you care, I can show you. It's gonna be one of these precast concrete structures. That's all double-sided, but he's working on designing one of these and figuring out how big it needs to be. But he said that and what we're gonna do is cut through. Nobody knows where the outlet really is and if the pipe is any good, so we're gonna investigate it a little bit once the snow melts, but it's likely we may have to just cut right through the big hump that's there, right to the, if you're looking downstream to the left of the overflow of the spillway. And that hole between the structure and everything could be, $150,000, $200,000. So
Is any of this work being done, going to be done by your people, or you going to contract that out?
well, the structure will be put in place with a crane, so we can't do that.
Right.
And then it's going to be a 15, 20-foot cut through the hill, and we really can't do that either. I mean, we just don't have that kind of equipment.
Okay.
So.
Question for you, because I know you asked that question. How much does it cost to pave a mile?
Pave them, I just got this, I can tell you what it is for a ton
Roughly, I mean,
of blacktop.
if we're gonna pave a mile of road, how much would it cost? Do you know that?
Let me see. I don't have it by the mile, because I haven't figured that out, but.
Just a question, that's all.
I can certainly get it for you, because I know that, say for Wells Road, it's 30,695 square yards, and it's $500,000. So, I mean, I'm not sure, I don't think anywhere's here.
In the distance?
We're talking Wells Road right from
We're talking all of it.
the whole length right out to 140.
Well, we're talking Wells Road from about, when they did the sewer job, when they did the sewer job, they did a little bit by Rollicut. There's an area from Rollicut to 140 that has to be done. And then from Rollicut, they go almost to the airport, because they repaved after they put the new sewer in. So, and then from there, all the way.
So that's
to,
a mile plus?
Huh?
That's over a mile.
Oh, yeah. It's pretty far.
Yeah. Mile and a half, maybe. Okay.
So.
All right, so we'll go on to the next, and you might as well stay here for that.
Sure.
Sure. Discussion and approval of transfer of $9,900 for Scout Hall repairs. And Amy was with us, and Len was there, and Scout Hall came to us and wanted us to do capital improvements or capital repairs. And what we did is split the difference with them, and I believe there were two problems with their
It was the same air handler, the same heating unit.
Unit was an air compressor?
One was AC, one was heat.
Yeah, so it was a compressor and a heat exchanger or something?
Yep.
So that, our contribution to that was
$9,900.
$9,900, and they paid $9,900 too, so.
Yep.
And
Go ahead.
since this request, I found out I actually don't have to come ask you guys. Transfers within your budget don't have to be asked just if it's an additional appropriation.
And by
It
your
can
budget.
really just be sent from me, as we know we need money in that line because it's overspent, to the Board of Finance. So, I mean, it's here, it's an operational problem for you guys, because right now that line is overspent.
Yeah.
But apparently,
Actually, that's an operational problem for the Board of Finance.
well, that's what it appears. It appears that it's really a transfer that I need to ask them for. That you guys only have to do it if it's additional appropriations, which I didn't realize at the time I asked Bob to put them on an agenda. I didn't realize that you guys don't do line-to-line transfers.
But I think it's important for
I think they need
for
to know.
these gentlemen to know that that line is overspent, and you
and
know,
ask-
and we're asking for more money
For next year.
as we're, you know, in the budgets, and we hate to ask for more money, and everybody does, but as these things, I mean, that was, you know, almost $10,000 for one unit, you know, I mean.
But better than the 40 or
It's
50,000.
45 or
to replace
50
it.
to replace it, so I mean, you know, it's a,
Yeah.
but now we were, there's no way we were anticipating doing really anything at Scout Hall, so that's a whole nother thing that's coming up. So that's, it's good for you to know that that's what happened.
I don't know how we untangle that whole thing.
Yeah, well, we're working on a
That would be your,
yeah, and that's true. We're negotiating with them right now to try to, in fact, I included that in your packet, that there's paragraph 6 in this lease agreement with Scout Hall, and we've rewritten it, and we've changed about a 3-inch paragraph into a whole page, so, and we're still working on it, so. Okay, and so we don't have to make a motion or anything, because you're just, yeah, okay,
That's good.
But I will be asking the Board of Finance for that transfer.
yeah.
And we do have excess money in our health insurance line because it had money for people who chose not to take insurance in the current budget. And it also had insurance for positions that then were not funded at the Board of Finance level. So the insurance was not adjusted down before it went to the voters. And it should have been.
Okay, so now we'll move on to item D, discussion and approval of transfer of $10,000 or $10,150 for IT professional services for Next Gen.
okay, this is the same issue. The PD got their new software, I guess, or dispatch, whatever it is, their new Next Gen system at X number of dollars. Well, come to find out, nobody really figured in the fact that our IT consultant had to spend $10,150 there during the setup that wasn't in the budget for the system. And that's partly it's partly our IT consultant and partly our our GIS consultant, because they had to integrate some GIS information into this system, whatever it is. So we got a couple of bills. You know, one was, I don't know, 3 or 4 or 5,000, whatever, from GIS.
GIS was 7,000 bucks.
And then,
GIS is who?
and then,
What do they do?
New England Geo, it's our mapping system. You know, that if you go on the town website, you can go get the assessor's maps, there's contours on there now and all that. So the GIS information needed to be integrated into this system, so they did that. And then our actual IT consultant was over there for days doing whatever they do, hooking things together, making sure it works. So again, something we hadn't anticipated on, and we'd like to get that budget's going to be overspent. So we'd like to get this back in the budget so we can.
Yeah, so everything wasn't all in when that was done.
Right. So, again, I guess it's informational at this
Yeah,
point. But I think you should know, sometimes these projects get put together and there's other issues that people don't foresee, and
Lesson learned.
Len gets stuck with them.
Okay, well, thank you, Len.
Am I done?
You're done.
Do I need anything else tonight?
No, no.
Good.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, so that will be another transfer I will be doing in the Board of Finance.
Good. Okay, now, discussion and approval of appropriation for Board of Education computers. And Amy, you might talk
All right,
to-
so the Board of Education came to the Board of Finance asking for an additional appropriation. The Board of Finance granted it, so it's actually back to you guys to just set the town meeting.
Okay, and this is something, it's a 3-year plan. I guess we did, well, and
Well, yeah.
I think,
I can explain if you want.
well, okay,
So they did a
I think it's in the
proposal.
package too, I think.
They
we-
did a proposal last February to the Board of Finance for the first wave of 3 years of computers of $200,000 each. So last year at the June 7th, 18 town meeting, an additional appropriation was done for $219,414.48. There was a second year amount, which is 204,260.98. And then there's actually a third year. So basically, they are replacing some of each grades, each of these 3 waves. So it's X number of student computers and X number of teachers' computers.
Yeah, in fact, we
And
have.
split over 3 waves.
Yeah, and, well, in first year it was 240 students and 78 teachers. Second year, which is this year, 367 students and 32 teachers. And the third year, 158 students and 30 teachers. And that, I guess they're good for 5 years.
Yes.
So in the 5th year, we'll have to start doing 3 years again. That's what it looks like.
So these requests, it changed a little bit, because I think the original request was for $230,000, and they ended up only doing 233 student computers and 68 teacher computers, for a total of $219,414.48. But that is all we went to the town meeting for, so we knew that reduction before we went to the town meeting. So we reduced it from the 230 ask to 219 for last year's. So this second wave needs 204,260.98. So that's what you guys need to set the town meeting date for. So it's wave 2 of 3. And the difference is you can either do $50-something thousand a year over 5 years for a lease, or you pay it up front and you save about $60,000 to $70,000 of finance charges by paying it up front instead of doing a 5-year lease.
Okay, you said that was 204,000 what?
204,260.98. And that's the amount that was the motion that was agreed upon at the Board of Finance meeting last month.
Okay, so I'll move we approve the supplemental appropriation for two.
Well, you don't need to
Yeah,
approve,
okay.
you, right, you just need to send it to
all
town
right.
meeting.
So then I move we send the appropriation for $204,260.98 to town meeting. And the town meeting will be at the March 21st, actually.
Okay.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Discussion.
You know, what happens to the old laptops?
They are not, they're beyond repair. They're no longer being serviced.
Well, I think.
So they go with the
maybe-
5 years.
Kathy, do you have?
Just to clarify a little bit, we are able to keep the old computers. And the numbers that you read came from last February's
Okay.
presentation. We actually changed it a little bit. We were able to take some of the out-of-warranty laptops that have come out of warranty that were replaced with new ones last year. We're using those in the lower grades and as spares. So, and we were able to take some of last year's and give them to the 6th grade. So in effect, what we did is even out the second 2 years. It was going to be a higher amount the second year, a lower amount the third year. What we did was kind of even that out, so it'll be more equal between those 2 years. But we do utilize the old ones as spares. If something breaks, we can use those until they're just not repairable anymore. But we don't want to invest a lot of money in those repairs because they're just not worth it.
I understand,
They're 5
just
years
that,
old.
you know, they all don't go bad on the day you get new ones.
No, and that's why we use
Yeah.
them as spares and put them on carts to use in the lower
Yeah.
grades.
Yeah.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. You?
No.
Okay. All right.
4 to 1.
3 to 1.
3 to 1.
Amy's not yet a voting member.
Take it out.
We just gave him 200,000 before. I don't like all this hidden stuff.
Okay, approval of meeting minutes. So
Can I go? Is that
Oh.
all the ones I need to do?
yes, you're done. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Amy.
So approval of, I move to approve the special meeting minutes of February 4th, 2019.
I'll second that.
Okay, discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. I move to approve the special meeting minutes of February 5th, 2019. Any discussion? Oh, I should say, is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Okay. I move to approve the special meeting minutes of February 7th, 2019. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. I move to approve the regular meeting minutes of February 21st, 2019. Any discussion? Or is there a second first?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Steve, did you vote? Approve the minutes? Okay. All right, communications, any communication? I don't have any communication. Public participation. Paul?
Paul Anderson, 89 Main Street. I have to voice a concern over the inclusion in the budget of money for the Warehouse Point Fire Department. I feel that that was to go through and that money went there. The district can still tax at whatever level they still choose. That doesn't guarantee an equalization. I think it's a mistake. I think that should be left for the future when a resolution comes to the fire district issue. Without that, I don't think we should be putting money into the budget for that purpose, since they have a method of raising their own money. It isn't going to fix any issues whatsoever financially, but it is going to be a detriment to other line items in the budget. To pay for that, money's got to come from somewhere to be able to make a budget that can pass. And if other line items get hurt because we're trying to fund that, I think it's a mistake. So that's what I have to say about that.
Okay. Sure. Anything else? Yes, Kathy?
You might recall that I came to the last meeting requesting a correction to the February 7th minutes where I had been quoted incorrectly. And that didn't happen. So I spent some time going through the video and transcribed the video myself and confirmed that I did not say what was in the minutes. I have that transcription. I'm willing to share it. I'm certainly not going to bore everyone by reading it, but
No,
I
but,
wanted to make that clear.
okay, and I too looked at the February 7th transcription, and I think Andy said that you said. And,
Correct. But
and you
it
did,
said that
and
I
you're
said.
saying you didn't say what Andy said you said.
Correct.
So the minutes, in a sense, are correct. It is what Andy said, but it's not,
No, the
but you
minutes say that I
disagree.
agreed that I said that.
Oh, okay.
And
Now-
that's what I took issue with. I did not agree that I said it. I refuted that I said it.
Yes, and so maybe I'm getting the minutes mixed up.
Yeah,
Is
well,
that?
it's been a few of them now.
Yeah, so you're talking about the discussion,
So,
well, first Andy did say that in a prior meeting,
Correct, on the January 17th meeting, which
17th.
I was not present at,
yes,
he made that comment.
that he
I
made
had
that
said
comment, and then you came and
I came and
wanted to correct
on
that.
February 7th and asked to have it, and refuted it.
Yes, and I hear what you're saying. Okay.
And then when I saw the February 7th minutes, it didn't say I refuted it, it said that I agreed to it.
Yeah.
So on February 21st, I requested a correction to that, which has not occurred that I'm aware of. I did not see those minutes on the meeting,
No,
on the review list for tonight, so.
You're right, and we might as well correct it, what the heck? Because I looked at, go
I
ahead.
went through and transcribed all of it word for word. so
Well,
it's all
and what I
piece of
did,
paper.
I looked at what was written, and this is what I believe was written. It says, Mrs. Seminelli cited reference in the previous board selectman minutes regarding Selectman Hoffman's request to her as to how to get answers to his questions regarding CIP. She agreed, and you're absolutely right, that that's incorrect, and I agree with you. But then I realized to transcribe, it's really not done word for word. So would it be all right if I said it there, she agreed, she had spoken, but she said, I haven't had the time yet. I didn't say I wasn't going to do it. Would that be?
That's accurate. That's
Okay.
one of the things I said, yes.
If we just amended the minutes to say that, and then just
So long as
left
you
out
take
this.
out the part that says that I agreed, that I said previously that I did not have the time or resources to do it.
Well,
It just is in effect.
Do you have the correction there that you want to put in?
I don't have the whole correction, because I don't,
All right,
I
well,
don't want the whole
let's-
thing in there. I'm gonna give this to you, Bob. This is the transcription.
I
I'll
worked
let
for
you-
20 minutes on this thing.
I-
It's not easy, but.
No, it's not. I spent
so-
quite a bit of time.
So why don't you and I work together, and go back and forth with emails, and when we agree,
Sure.
we'll make the
That'd be great.
corrections.
I don't need this whole thing in there. I just needed to not say that I said I wouldn't do it.
Okay, well, we'll email back and forth, and then,
Deal.
okay.
Excuse me?
Yes. Yes?
Since I'm involved in this, could I be involved in the emails?
Okay, you can be involved in the email.
Because I looked at the transcription as well.
Yeah, and I really appreciate what you do, because when I tried to transcribe it, I said, oh boy, this is not easy.
So I'd like a copy of Kathy's transcription.
Okay, sure.
as well, please.
Yeah. Okay. Now, further public participation, yes.
Bill Lowe's, Melrose Road. I'd like to thank the Board of Selectmen for voting appropriation for the Charter Revision Commission for a recording secretary. In the letter we sent out to all the townspeople, they wanted to know what was going on at all our meetings. And as a secretary of that committee, I could have wrote a minutes of the meeting saying the meeting started at 7 p.m. All members were present and accounted for. The secretary's report was accepted as read. Discussion of the charter was done. Meeting adjourned 9 o'clock. I could have submitted that to the town here as the minutes of that meeting. But I don't think that's what the Board of Selectmen want us to do. I think they want people in the town to know what's going on at these meetings. Now, a recording secretary records the pros and cons of what's going on. And those minutes are recorded and put in the town clerk's office for anybody to look at. You look at the people here tonight at the meeting, there's very few. By recording all those minutes that we talk about, discussions, anybody can get those minutes and know what's going on in town. I think that's what the people want. So again, I thank the, I guess it was the majority of the Board of Selectmen, not everyone, for that appropriation of $1,500. Thank you.
Thank you. Further public participation, yes.
Regis with 10 Rice Road. My understanding of that meeting was that you used the charter revision and the verbiage in the charter revision that an individual can get reimbursed for any expense for their committee. I don't think there was an added appropriation given to them. It was the fact that they could get reimbursed for their income that they they put out. So just for clarification, if that's incorrect, please correct it.
I think that was correct.
I think that's, so there was no added appropriation to that. But I just want to let you know, since you brought it up, you've opened up Pandora's box, because I'm sure you're going to get other committees that have come forward that have run out of money in the past and have made do and did stuff themselves. They're going to be coming back and using that same clause. So you opened up that door, so just know it's probably going to come down the pipe.
Okay, any further public participation? All right. Hearing none, we move along. Broadbrook Mill. And I went to a meeting last week with DEEP, DCED, UTAS, Collins Aerospace, which is a new character that's come in, and people from the Broadbrook Mill Committee, Len Norton, Keith Biagaloff, myself, and Andy. And I was going to let him talk about it, but he is not here tonight. In representing UTAS was a lawyer and another person that I hadn't seen, but he seemed in Martin DeRamo, who seems to be a person that we're talking to, and is a high level of UTAS. It could have been his boss was there, and another lawyer who was this Collins Aerospace, and also Bill Penn, who comes and talked to us. And it was a funny meeting in a way. It started out, Bill Penn said exactly what he said when he came and talked to us like 6 months or a year ago. He said, oh no, because he was, but as the meeting progressed, one guy from, and I think it was DECD, it could have been Deep, said, because we were debating of the delta between moving the semi-volatile chemicals into a consolidation area and capping it with a impermeable cap, or taking them off-site. And it would cost, the difference between the cost of moving it to consolidation area on-site and taking it off-site is about $175,000. And there were about 14 people in the meeting, and this guy says, "You mean we're here for $175,000?" And he was shocked, and we said, "Yeah," and Bill Penn said, "Yeah." So that was good that the guy representing UTAS said, "Yeah," and so that kind of broke the ice, and it came down to the lawyer for UTAS said, "Listen, we don't want to own that place," and they seem to be able to, or be willing to do quite a bit. In other words, take the volatile, semi-volatile chemicals off-site. They would be willing to preserve what they call building number 11, which is the main mill building, and then clean up the other areas, remediate it, and take down buildings that wanted to be taken down, and even listen to how we might want to configure things, the property, so it could be developed. And so, but their thing is, we don't want to own it. And we said, well, the town doesn't want to own it. So there are some options, and one option is to get a developer. If you get a developer, sell it, they'd give it to them for $1. And so we're working on that. Another option is, they talked about a land bank, so we've got to look into what a land bank could own it. So that's something. And then the third thing is an LLC that we could form, and that would own it. So, and it wouldn't be the town. There'd be no, and there's also then Deep and this DECD talked about grants that we could get, and also I guess there's one of these other entities that could own it could get a guarantee that there'd be no liability for them. So things are moving, and we're just at the beginning, but it doesn't look like they're just going to come in and make a consolidation area and then cover the rest of it with about 2 feet of topsoil and call it done. So we'll see what happens, but it was a good meeting.
That's good news.
Yeah. So, moving on to the next topic. Charter revision, I think we still haven't gotten any funding for the recording secretary, so we're working on that. Casino, in the newspaper article, and I did talk at the state legislature with Chris Davis, and it came out of committee. The newspaper reported that Bill 11, which is the one that says they're going to remove the paragraph. So if Bill 11 passes, we can start building a casino immediately, as soon as it passes. So that's out of the committee. Now it's going to the state legislature. But also out of this public safety committee, the other bill, and I don't know the number of that, but it's the, I'll call it the MGM bill, that requests open RFPs and open bids, also came out of the committee. So those are competing bills. So both of them can't pass. So we'll see what happens. So I'll report that.
So just as a point of clarification, Senate Bill 11 is not on the committee.
Bill 11 is not on the committee?
It is not. It was heard on the 22nd, or the 26th. It was just referred to the committee today. So the way the process works is there was a proposed bill that was submitted, which is Senate Bill 11. That was heard, and then the committee voted to draft it based on that public hearing. When they draft it, they take the proposed bill, which is usually 2 or 3 lines, and they turn it into a full statutory proposal. Now that it's been referred back to the Public Safety Committee, they're eligible for action on it because the bill has been heard and it has statutory language. So there's still a vote needed in committee.
Oh.
It has not happened.
Okay, because it says, and I just got it from reading the paper. It says state legislature clash sharply, blah, blah, blah. And lawmakers essentially split into 2 groups. Let's see. Okay. No, maybe I misread it, but I thought it.
No,
Well, that's good.
It just came back today.
Okay, so it's back, so it's not out of the Public Safety Committee yet.
It is not.
So, okay, so, all right. Never mind.
And the House bill I think you're looking for is 6576, and that creating the Connecticut Gaming Commission and creating a competitive bidding process for.
Yeah, so what's the name of that number of that bill again?
House Bill 6576.
6576.
And I'll tell you what that is in a second. That bill has not had, that bill looks to me like it's dead. It was referred to committee on the 28th. There's been no action to either draft it or hear it. I don't think that bill is still alive.
That's a good thing. That's good news.
Give me one more second, I'll tell you for sure.
Jason and Steel for split bidding?
It is, no, sports betting is still alive. This one is 6576, an act creating the Connecticut Gaming Commission and creating a competitive bidding process for a resort casino. Where's the deadlines? Public safety. That bill's dead.
I'll call up David Capiello tomorrow.
6576, yeah, call him tomorrow and ask him if 6576 is still alive. I think it's dead.
Okay. I hope that it's
I don't know if
dead.
that's the only one out there, but it's the only one I saw.
Okay. All right, so we'll move on to the next item, and that's the budget workshops, and the next budget workshop is March 11th, on Monday, and we'll have it here. Okay. Okay, now the renaming of human services. So I've talked to Melissa, and she would like it to be renamed. There's a lot of confusion between human resources and human services. And so we've talked to her, and we've talked to her as a committee, and I think we'd like to name it social services. That's what the state calls it. So I move to rename the Human Services Department the Social Services Department.
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor? Okay. Now, mileage reimbursement. We had a reimbursement procedure that we hammered out pretty well, and the unions pushed back, and they said they just wanted the General Services Administration, GSA. So really, it's the sentence says the town employees for travel expenses incurred at the per mile rate established by, and we said the General Services Administration, GSA, while traveling using their own vehicle. And they wanted the General Services Administration, GSA, changed to the Internal Revenue Service, IRS. And that they're virtually the same thing. And that's what we had in the prior one. And the unions just don't like change, I guess. So I will make a motion. I move we change the mileage reimbursement policy to read expenses incurred at the per mile rate established by the Internal Revenue Service, IRS.
And the difference is?
The difference is the internal revenue, the way I read it, the way the motion reads, is the way the mileage reimbursement policy read before we changed it. And we, in our change, we did very good procedures, and the policy really spells out very clearly how they would be reimbursed for their mileage, but we said would they be reimbursed by the General Services Administration rate. And right now, they're virtually the same as the IRS Revenue Services rate. But the unions are objecting to us changing the identification of the rate. They want it to remain the IRS Internal Revenue Service rate. I guess they're both about 54 cents a mile, a little over 54 cents a mile.
But why?
Well, why?
Yeah. Why is there an issue with one to the other?
Does one report to the other?
The unions have issue with it, and why the unions have issue with something is beyond me. They have issues with many things.
Well,
but if it's to make that, if to implement this, all we have to do is go back to something that we had before. It doesn't bother me.
Well, I'd like to know why.
By changing the wordage, does it change the rate?
No.
Okay.
It might.
Something.
No, it might. Steve's got a good question.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The IRS rate is the one that applies to everybody in the country. GSA rate applies to government employees.
Okay. There you
Totally
go.
different concept. It's not the number, because they each can have a different number. Whether they do today has nothing to do with it. It's what they can do. But IRS applies to everybody in the country. I'm a small business owner, my mileage deduction is controlled by IRS, not by GSA.
Well, if you want to have this,
Is there a difference in the mileage rate?
not at the moment.
There could be.
There could be.
If you want to have this policy start today, then we can change those words. If you don't want it to start today, we can further investigate it.
Yeah, I'd like to know what the objection
I
is.
will be happy to ask the unions what the objection is.
Wonderful.
But nonetheless, we'll vote. Did I make the motion?
Yeah, you did.
Is there a second?
Hang on a second.
I'll second it.
All right. And I'm hanging on a second.
Trying to figure out if the GSA is part of the IRS.
And is there a difference in
It's kind of
rate?
important to
No.
somebody, though.
No, but Paul pointed out that It could be in the future, you know, they're just the same now.
Probably the treasurer.
IRS is part of the treasury.
Yeah, this is different part to that. Government spending would be in there, not mileage, just reimbursement.
Oh, I wish I knew what the problem here was.
So what would the rate be right now, Bob?
I believe
50?
it's around 54 point something,
The GSA rate just got bumped to 58.
58,
So did
okay,
the IRS, 58.
okay, 58.
Is the GSA part of the IRS?
Ah,
I can't find an org chart.
can't even.
When you say that next meeting was? Monday.
The March 11th, the next Monday.
Yeah, okay, all right, let you go.
So, okay, Jason, can we vote or not?
I can't, yeah, sure.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Charlie, and now it comes right down to Steve.
I guess I want to know the same thing he does.
Okay. All right.
Is there going to be a difference?
There might be in the future, there is no
You
difference
know,
now.
do they want to change because they can get more money out of us, or?
No, I think they want to change because IRS is what it used to be. And so they think we're trying to hustle them. And maybe we are, I wasn't.
I don't believe that for a minute, Bob.
Okay, then we won't pass it.
I'll vote for it. The hell with it.
Okay.
Thank you, Steve.
Just get it done, the hell with it.
All right, thank you.
Get it done.
Sorry,
Talking pennies here.
Yeah, let's do
you know.
you voted.
I voted yes. I voted yes. Steve
Just get
voted
it
yes.
done.
Okay, now we're down to the discussion of the Hartford Foundation Greater Together Community Funds. And Jason, you want to do
Yep.
it? Yeah.
So this was something that was raised by Debbie Talamini and Sharon Tripp. The Hartford Foundation for Public Giving has set aside at least small, if not medium-sized pots of money for the 29 towns in the region that they service. But they have a number of requirements in order to access those projects. And I'm going to read part of what that is. Each community fund, which is what the 29 different pots of money are, each community fund will be handled by an advisory committee of town residents that must be inclusive, representative, and reflective of all of the residents of that community. In order to establish an initial advisory committee in each town, the Hartford Foundation will conduct broad outreach to town residents, informing them of the opportunity to be a part of the advisory committee. These advisory committees will identify the greatest needs of their communities and design a grant-making process aimed to ensure that the community funds can have the greatest impact for the benefit of the town residents. Hartford Foundation staff will provide guidance on topics such as participatory decision-making, grant-making, and fund development as needed. Each town's advisory committee may work differently and will operate independently. So this is a project that the Hartford Foundation is working on for the spring of this year. As I understand it, and I'll look to Debbie if I'm misstating this, but I believe what we need to do as a town government is indicate to the Hartford Foundation that yes, we're interested in their community support. And it seems to me like they then will determine what the composition to make sure it's inclusive and representative of the different sectors of the community. It looks to me like they will take the lead on that as I read this.
Okay.
Is that fair?
One, I don't know a whole lot either. I had gone to there was a South Windsor, East Windsor, like joint town. They've been doing all these 29 towns jointly together, like, you know, Manchester was separate and Rockville-Horner was together, and I forget who Windsor Locks was with. Informative, but not super informative, because I think they're still working out the technicals of it all. It's $100,000 they're giving to each of the 29 towns, but you're getting $50,000 up front, $50,000 the next year, but you can only use the interest off of that $50,000. You can't use it all. And how you use it, I'm not sure, because assuming you sort of apply for the things that you want. So this advisory committee, which again was unclear whether, that's why I asked Jason, like, if you guys even heard about it as Board of Selectmen, because, you know, a good chunk of money's coming down your way. if you hadn't even heard about it, I don't know if they approach the town, if they go to the Board of Selectmen, the mayor, or whoever, to say, hey, we're gonna give you this money. That all wasn't really worked out at these workshops.
Okay, and do you have a contact or anything?
Well, no, I have a little card that I had got at the meeting. Sharon Tripp and I are both on the, like, give us information sort of thing as it was coming out. It was supposed to be spring.
Okay. You have a website here.
Yeah, spring
And
2019.
a phone number. So I'll
Yeah,
call
just
and
to
I'll
see.
look into it. Yeah.
It was spring 2019, I mean, spring could be now, spring could be the end of May. They weren't real specific on things because it was a brand new thing that they were coming up with. But there has to be a town advisory committee to do it, and then it's got to be representative of all the residents. There's, I'm sure, certain caveats as far as what you can get money for and all that kind of stuff.
Great.
Yeah, undoubtedly. You're not gonna be able to do something that doesn't meet their mission.
Oh, right, exactly. And it sounded like they were gonna have an advisor person meet with your group, or you'd have to go back and forth with them, so.
So there's a small group of citizens who have some free time now. What, the 250?
I'm just relaying the message. Don't assign the message.
I'm just saying. But, you know, it does seem like an opportunity to partner with an organization that has a great reputation, to do something that could potentially be meaningful for the town, and to engage citizens in the civic process to make some of these decisions. So I think it's a good project. I think it's worth a phone call if you're willing to make that.
And then
just
how
see what
would
happens.
you find people to be on the advisory committee? I mean, assuming we would get this money and stuff, and just to sort of go from there.
I'll ask them that.
Well, no, I'm not even saying myself, I'm just saying, you want a wide variety of good people out there to actually, you know, come together and make a good choice, because this is for down the road too. You're going to be able to utilize some extra funds that are here, so. Okay, I just want to make sure everyone was aware of it.
Yeah,
they did have a handout with like 5 organizations that gave money to.
Well, that was the grant process. They had like the Trolley Museum and things like that, or their normal, you know, every year sort of grant things. It was above and beyond that, like whether you want a beautification or like do something else that's going to benefit everyone in the town and the majority of the people in the town. So, had you heard about it before this time?
I wouldn't have followed up on it. So
okay,
really,
well that's what I'm saying. There's just an opportunity out there that it's kind of too good to pass up.
Yep, great.
Does the town have to match it with?
No.
It's all free money, just gonna hand it over to us?
Well, I'm sure you have to, you know, have certain requirements and stuff too, but it was basically kind of here it is, like, you know, pull it away a little bit as far as you meet their requirements or whatever, but it's an opportunity for the town to do something good, so.
Did you hear how much any other town got?
Every single town's getting the 100,000, but it means 50,000 up front, and then the other 50,000 is an annuity where you just can use the interest off of that, is my understanding.
Got it.
And again, does it go to the treasurer, does it go on the town line? I don't know any of that, because I don't even know if they knew that. But I guess if you could follow up as selectman just to see what it is, and they may not know all the specifics yet, but it's a huge, huge chunk to help.
Great. Okay, so now we'll move on to the next. Discussion of ordinance for property tax assessment. And that was part of the package. And what was part of the package is just a state statute, really. Section 1281B. And the story behind this is the Historical Society purchased a large piece of land on Cemetery Road. And I guess once they're on the grant list, they'll get a tax exemption for that. But I guess at the date of the closing, at the date of the acquisition, they had to pay taxes for it. So the only way they can get those taxes back is to have an ordinance saying that when a nonprofit buys something, that they don't have to pay taxes at the closing for it, or they're reimbursed for the taxes they pay.
How much were the taxes?
I don't know. That's a good question. And we don't have to make this. In fact, we're not going to make it tonight. But I brought it up because one question that I had is if we do make it, it can be made for a specific transaction, like the Historical Society. This particular transaction, you can say, you can make the ordinance last for a year, and then it goes away. And you can limit it in other ways, and I'd have to ask the assessor how to do it. Or you can make a general ordinance to say, if this ever happens, then this is the way the town will do it. So my question to you tonight would be, do you want a specific one for the Historical Society, or would you like a general one for any similar transaction?
It's all out for nonprofit, right?
Yeah.
It should be for any nonprofit.
No, that's not, if you read the thing that he gave us, there are something like 11 exclusions from,
Right.
And so what the exclusions are, not on that piece of paper, but it's property used for scientific, educational, literary, historical, charitable, or open space land preservation purposes, college property, personal property loaned to tax-exempt educational institutions, property belonging to agricultural or horticultural societies, property held for cemetery use, personal property or religious organizations devoted to religious and charitable uses, houses of religious worship, property of religious organizations used for certain purposes, houses used by officiating clergymen as dwellings, property of hospitals and sanatoriums, property of veterans organizations.
We could specify, probably, we don't have to do it for all of them. It says in this statute that it's 7 through 16 and 18, so, and what was the first one, Jason, 7?
7 was property used for scientific, educational, literary, historical, charitable, or open space land preservation purposes.
So, and maybe, I'll talk to the assessor, we could just say historical if that's what we want to do.
Well, I think you need to reference subsection 7 of 1281,
Yeah.
which is the exemptions.
Well, as a matter of practice, currently, there's not a property tax charge for churches and et cetera.
Well, but I think it's the purchase of it. There seems to be a gap between when it's on the grand list and they're not taxed for it, but they seem to be taxed before they get on the grand list. That's my understanding.
Well, it says here, Bob, shall be effective as of the date of acquisition of the property.
Yeah, the
So,
establishment
I guess-
by ordinance, it says. So we have to have an ordinance that
So I would
says,
think they would have to pay the tax up until
till they're
that day they owned it, and after that, they wouldn't have to pay any more tax.
That's true, but only if we have an ordinance.
In the ordinance, then they don't pay it at all.
But, and my question is, you want to make it specific, or you want to make it general? And I'll come with the ordinance, I'll give you the money too when we
Did
go.
you talk with Helen about it?
I did, and that was her question, do you want to make it general, or do you want to make it specific?
What were her thoughts?
We want to make it specific.
Well, her thoughts, she said it could go either way, and other towns have done it either way.
So the reason we want to make it specific is because it says that the exemption shall be effective as of the date of the acquisition of the property, and we shall provide a procedure for reimbursement of the tax-exempt organization for any tax paid for a period subsequent to said date, and for any tax paid by the prior owner for a period subsequent to said date, for which such organization reimbursed such owner on the transfer of the title of such property. So we could end up, if it's not specific, we could end up, in some circumstance, paying out a lot of money in some
So,
cases.
and that's fine, so we'll do it, we'll say specific.
That's fine.
Yeah. Okay. And that kind of brings us to the end of our new business, so I'll entertain a motion for, to approve the tax refunds.
We'll make the motion to authorize the tax refund in the amount of $4,712.27.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Selectmen comments and reports. Steve?
I went down to the hearing there on the casino, on the bills. Basically, it was the same argument. People in the Bridgeport area are all for the casino going there with the opening of the bid process, and people up around here don't want it. They want the casino in East Windsor. Basically the same every time you go there and you listen to it. That's it for me.
Okay. Jason?
So as you guys know, we are in the midst of the budget process, and considerable discussion has been held this cycle around whether or not the town should consider funding certain external entities, and if so, at what appropriate levels. The specifics that have been discussed include requests for the Broadbrook Library, the Warehouse Point Fire District, and the Warehouse Point Library. And so kind of to get a sense of what people in town thought about those things, I threw a poll up on Facebook, and I crafted the question so that it said, should the town consider paying for maintenance and repairs to facilities that the town does not own, even if it may be in the public interest to do so? I got 202 respondents. I spent $0 on it, and I can't confirm that everybody who responded was from town, but it's a pretty good sample. With a margin of error, with a population of 11,500, that's a 7% margin of error, and it was 53% opposed to doing that, 47% in favor of doing that. Which tells you not much more than a flip of a coin, but it was an interesting way of engaging people on social media to figure out what their thoughts are on an issue. So it took about a week to do. It was no work, but it took about a week to aggregate all the information. And I thought it was a worthwhile thing to do in terms of engaging folks. Other than that, it's been budget workshops. I did not go to the event at the Capitol because at the time I was an executive branch employee and supported the governor's position.
Okay.
Excuse me, what did you just say? What did you just say?
Which part?
You were in here supporting the governors?
That's not what I said, Steve.
Well, tell me what you said.
At the time, I said at the time I was an executive branch employee and support the governor's position. That's since changed.
I would hope
You're
so.
not an employee of the
No,
executive.
I took a job in the judicial branch.
Yeah, but now how about the governor's position? What is his
Oh,
position?
no, well, he seems to be more in favor of the open competitive process. I would much rather have the casino go to East Windsor.
I think so, yeah. Okay, well, there you go. Charlie?
Yeah, I attended the hearing as well, the second one, and it was different than the first one in January. And it was kind of yin and yang. The people that were from Bridgeport that were on the committee, they wanted to go to the competitive bidding, the others didn't. That wasn't the situation in the last one. So I think it's still in motion. I didn't feel quite as confident this time as I did the first meeting in January, but I think there's support there from a lot of people, and at the end of the day, it's about the money. That, it's a huge financial risk for the state if they don't do this, or if they allow that competitive bidding to ever happen, because they firmly said, the compact said that they would not any longer, as soon as they start to go to competitive, never mind make a decision, that they would give any more money to the state. So that was that.
Yeah. The only thing I'll throw out is it looks like Sardelli is going to happen. I don't think he's bought the property yet, but I'm not sure. But and I know Jason gives a look, but it looks like everything's a go now. He passed the wetlands and and got his permits through planning and zoning. So that's a good thing for me. I think it's a good thing. It's a $20 million addition to our grand list, so that's significant.
Bob, I want to say, can I say one thing about that?
Sure.
From what I'm told, the reason they want to widen Water Street is because the trucks are going to leave that facility on Water Street. They're going to come out the backside, come down Water Street and go. They're not going to leave the facility on Route 5
Really?
in front of the complex.
Okay. Huh.
That's why they're widening it out.
I'm sure that's true.
They'll go down South Water Street?
Yeah, they're gonna come out the back side and come down to the light, and then go whichever way they're gonna go.
But they
they're
will
gonna-
go on Route 5.
Right, they're gonna end up on Route 5, but now, when you go into that facility, you're gonna be going in from Route 5.
Yeah,
In front of the Mercury station there.
yeah,
You'll enter it from there and go out the backside,
yeah.
come down
And
Water Street.
The traffic isn't so bad, considering that, because what they do is they distribute produce, fresh produce, and what they want to do is get it to the hospitals and the stores early in the morning. So they beat the rush hour. They're out at 6 o'clock in the morning with their trucks. And then the produce comes in during the day from the farms, and that is, again, before the 4 o'clock rush hour. The products are coming in during the day, so it's not going to hurt the rush hour traffic very much. So that's a good thing.
Well, I would think that they would probably have delivery times like they do up at the poultry products. You know, they give these guys delivery times to show up with their,
Oh, yeah,
with their
yeah.
stuff, you know.
The produce, yeah. Okay, I guess, well, no, we're gonna go into executive session, so I move we take a quick break and go into executive session. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Still on, so I have to say that
Oh, yeah. I was watching that thing all week, and I was like,
Apology.
Oh, these are close.
I thought that was